Hi there, Dominic here with a video introduction to modeling in Modo. Now, covering everything that Modo has to offer is a daunting task. There's so much that is simply impossible to create a short video introduction per se, but I'm going to try to do a short intro anyway, and hopefully it will get new Modo users up to speed quickly navigating around and having some basics to what Modo has to offer modeling wise. I've started Modo, as you can see here, and this is the default interface. The first thing I always do is scale my Modo viewport. Well, right now it is actually smaller than my complete screen, and that is because I'm also recording this video. But anyway, I want to show you that I never maximize my viewport by double clicking on the top bar or clicking the maximize button in the upper right corner. And why? Because, well, when you maximize the viewport, and I'm going to do so by double clicking, you get the Windows toolbar if you're on a PC, and I think this is a waste of screen pixels, so I'm going to double click to minimize again, and I always drag my window all the way up so the top bar disappears from my screen. This saves me some screen pixels, and I have a larger vertical view that way. And for this video I'm of course also resizing the video to the part that is recorded by the video. Just wanted to show you that you can save a bit of screen pixels by just clicking and dragging the top bar off your screen. So when you open Modo, I've trashed my config file, so this is my default setup, Modo setup. First you have your menus over here, and in these menus you can do everything you need to do in Modo, but of course there are a lot of shortcuts, and these shortcuts you can find them in the different tabs that you see on top of this. In default, you open your model view, which gives you your perspective view and your tools and your tools properties over here, and over here you have items, shader tree, groups, images, and then properties, channels, display, and lists. This is by default. Just going to go over it for a while. For the settings, you have the model quad tab. This also was already maximized, so my top view, front view, and right view, perspective view. When you're in a view and you press the 0 key, it maximizes the view. 0 again to minimize it again. Also possible in other views, so when I'm in the item list over here and I press 0, you see that it maximizes. 0 again. Also in the model tab, when I press 0 here, you see I get a complete view. 0 again. We have the paint tab with the layout for painting, a topo tab with layout for doing retopo. It suggests you check out the spotlight videos that are accessible to you when you upgraded Modo 601 or when you purchased Modo 601. Spotlight videos by Andy Brown, very useful. Also explains the topo tab. You have the UV tab for doing UV, so for instance when I create a cube, you see then I have my UVs over here. Layout for assembling your scene with your preset manager. I can click and drag presets in my scene. Right now you see that hand has been added by clicking and dragging it into the scene, or when I double click it, you see another preset is added. You can also see it over here in the item list. I have the hand, the skin. I have my setup tab for rigging and various other options, and each time your interface changes, again, most of these tools are accessible also in the menu. I have my animate tab. where the setup is useful for animation, and I have my render tab where my setup is useful for making renders, of course, and adding materials to your scene. First, maybe go back to the model tab. So over here I have my tools, I have my unit primitives, I have my most important transforms like move, rotate and scale. Some of them have little black triangles. That means that when you right click on them you get to choose another tool that's underneath. Right click, you can left click and hold left click and then you can choose, but when you go off it disappears. So left click and hold, and when you have to hold your left mouse button. If you're over a tool and let go of the left mouse button, that tool is active. I can make it inactive by pressing the spacebar or clicking on that icon again, or pressing escape like that. I can also right click on it, and then as I hover away with my mouse, you see it stays there, which is, I also always right click on it, because with left mouse button click you have to keep the left mouse button pressed. Several important tools. You have your several tabs with extra tools for deforming, duplicating, for editing the mesh, for adding and manipulating vertices, same for edges, polygons, for doing UV operations. I suggest checking out my other videos on my YouTube channel, which cover a lot of these tools already, so I'm not going to explain them here one by one again. What else do we have here? So I'm going to maximize my perspective viewport by pressing the 0 key again. What do we see? We have the ground plane grid, which is the black one. We have a lighter grid, which is my work plane. A work plane is a concept in Modo which is very important. When I, for instance, click left mouse button, click on the cube here, you see that icon highlights, and now my cube tool is active, and you see it over here, see its properties, but nothing has happened in the viewport yet. And when I click and drag now in the viewport, it will happen on this ground plane. So when I change my view, you see the ground plane, the work plane, sorry, my work plane, you see it shift to another axis. Also when I rotate like that, again, you see the work plane shift to another axis. And you can also see it over here. You have this widget over here, and you see Z and X axis, and you have a white plane between. So now my work plane is on the ZX axis. When I rotate again, you see now it has jumped from the to the YZ axis, and when I rotate that, it has jumped to the YX axis. So my cube tool is still active. I haven't done anything yet. Now when I click and drag, you see the beginnings of a cube. It's still a flat plane at this time. I haven't given it any depth, and you see that it is on the YX plane. You have these widgets which you can interactively click and drag in the viewport. You can also click the handles to place it. Now I've dragged it away from my work plane, and when I click and drag the middle one, I can give it depth. I can also click and drag to the other side. I can give it depth, and while this tool is still active, I can manipulate it, for instance, by setting the position X to 0. Now we see it has shifted to X0. I can click these icons. When I click it, then everything I do up here will happen on all axes. So when I set it, for instance, to 0 again, now you see all of them have become 0. And as long as this tool is active, I can make changes to this interface or interactively with the available widgets over here, like that. Now dropping the tool can be done by pressing the spacebar or clicking on this icon again or pressing escape. So you see now I have added this mesh. Another important is center selected over here. So another an important concept in Modo is if nothing is selected, then everything is selected. So if I perform an operation on this when nothing is selected, it will do it on everything. So when I say, for instance, center selected on all axes, now you see my geometry has shifted to the center on all axes. I'm going to Control Z to undo that. If I make a selection first, I'm now left mouse button clicking and dragging over these polygons, center selected all, you see only those polygons get center selected. So another important concept when starting out, so I did it in polygon mode, and over here you see polygon is highlighted, so now I'm in polygon component mode. I can right mouse button click in my viewport, again right mouse button click in my viewport, and I can choose whether to set vertices, edges or polygons over here. So now I've selected edges, or I can press the space bar time and time again, and you see every time I do this it toggles between vertices, edges, polygons, vertices, edges, polygons. So when the tool is active, pressing the space bar will deactivate the tool. When the tool is deactivated, pressing the space bar, it will toggle between vertices, edges and polygons. Over here I can also set my selection to materials, and now when I hover over this one, it will highlight all of this because it all has the same material. So when certain polygons would have a different material, only the material part that I hover over would get an outline like that. And again here items, again there's a little triangle here, so when I right click I can choose items, pivots and centers. There already are several videos that are very useful on Luxology TV and on YouTube, and I suggest also you check out the tips, tricks and tutorials section on Luxology forum to find other tutorials. There is already a whole lot of tutorials out there, so check them out to get comfortable with Modo. So I have now selected items. When I click in the left click in the viewport, it deselects my item. When I hover over it, you see it highlights. When I click it, it gets selected, and hover over it, I click it and hover away from it, it's highlighted yellow, and you see in the item list here now that item is selected. Going back to polygons, double click, move it, because as you see, when I choose, I don't have to be in item mode over here. When I'm in polygon mode and select this item layer over here, it does select this item, but I'm still in polygon component mode. When I select the hand, now it's that over here, you see I'm still in polygon mode, but my hand item got selected. When I choose this, now nothing has changed, and when I hover over I can select different items like that. This one is already selected. When I click it, see now this item is selected, and I can choose polygons, edges or vertices to manipulate it in component mode. What else do I have? I have my action centers over here. On Luxology TV, everything about this is explained by videos by Brad Peebler, so make sure to check him out. What do action centers do? Well, for instance, if I want to make a selection like that and press the R key, for instance, to scale. R is the shortcut key for scaling. Now when I click over here, you see my handles get placed there, and when I operate on them, you see it scales from there. Now what if I want, I'm going to Control Z undo, what if I want this to be in the center over here? I can set, for instance, my action center to selection, and now you see my handles have been placed in the center of that selection. And now when I click and drag on the yellow circle, for instance, to scale on all three axes, it happens from the center. I can set also, for instance, my action center to the origin, and now my handles are placed at the origin, and now all scaling will happen from the origin. So action centers, check out Luxology TV, very important. Going to drop with spacebar, so my tool is now gone. If I press escape, and then my tool pipe has been cleared, and press escape again, now my selection is gone. So pressing escape first deactivates the tool, then clears the tool pipe, and then clears my selections. Also very useful when I have a selection and a tool active, for instance again the scale tool. I have scaled it. I can do this interactively in the viewport by using these widgets. The circle all three axes, these are the planes, and these are the single axis scaling, like that. When I want to reset to my default settings, I can do so in the pipeline over here. When I click on transform over here, I can click reset tool, or I can press Ctrl D, and now you see it has been reset. So right click to reset, or press Ctrl D to reset, and you can start again. All of this is possible while this tool is active. And again, this will be deactivated by pressing spacebar or clicking again on the tool icon, like that. I have my symmetry options. I can set it to X, Y, and Z. In modo you can do one axis at a time only. So if you want to operate on, for instance, on X, then make sure that this is centered on the X and symmetrical, otherwise it will not work. The symmetry options off. I can also create symmetrically, so for instance when I set symmetry to X and choose the sphere, and then when I click and drag, now I'm only going to get a flat circle. I'm going to Ctrl Z to undo. I can Control click, and then I get a unit sphere in the middle, like that. Ctrl Z to undo. Or with symmetry X on, when I click the sphere and click and drag, you see it gets duplicated on the X axis. So I can create symmetry with symmetry on, like that. I can edit. Now when I Control click and drag on one of these widgets, it gets a unit in all axes, a uniform amount, as you can see over here in the radius. Or when I select a single axis, like that, I can set the number of sides and segments. I can also do it numerically or manually over here. I can set the axis that I want over here, and all of that is still possible while the tool is active. I've pressed spacebar to drop the tool. Going to turn off symmetry. Over here you have fall-offs. Again, check Luxology TV, a lot of videos about fall-offs, very useful. Also my videos on YouTube cover fall-offs, very useful if you want to do an operation with different effects on different polygons. So for instance, if I wanted to scale one of these spheres and I wanted to have an impact that is greater here than there, then I could use, for instance, a linear fall off, and then the operation would be very small over here, or even completely nothing over there and bigger over here. So that's already covered in lots of other videos. Make sure to check them out. Your snapping, turning on snapping, pressing the F11 key gets you snapping options, or you can click over here and you get your snapping options, so you can set snapping to on. Again, lots of this is already covered in other videos. Make sure to look up as much as videos as you can. And you have your work plane options, very important concept of work plane in modo. So I can reset this work plane, for instance, by selecting a polygon and then going to work plane and set align work plane to selection. Now you see my work plane has been realigned, and now when I, for instance, would start drawing, I'm going to Control click and drag. Sorry, going to undo that. So sorry, Control, so again make the tool active, control click and drag like that. Now this has started from the work plane. I can reset that work plane. Reset work plane. You can also do that via shortcut keys, manipulating that work plane, so make sure to read the manual about it for the different shortcut keys. So for instance, I'm going to go out of sub D for that by pressing the tab key. When you press the tab key, you go into sub D or out of sub D. Shift tab is Catmull Clark. So for instance, checking this one, the shortcut key to align the work plane is Shift Home key, and now you see my work plane is aligned to that polygon, and the end key resets my work plane. Maybe this is enough for a first video. I'm going to stop this now and maybe continue in the next one. Hope you find this useful. This was Dominic. Bye for now.